We want to call this meeting in order. It's good to have you all here today. We apologize for our lateness, but it's only a couple minutes, so we hope you'll cut us some slack. Just so you know, I want to make a comment an announcement at the beginning of this. We have a public hearing scheduled today, and the item H3 in there is a approval for form-based village zoning up in the Nordic Valley village area. We are holding that item today, and we're not going to take any action on it. We've had some things come up, and we've decided we want to hold a little more. But since we've had it advertised and there's people here to comment, we're going to continue the public hearing portion of it and allow you to go ahead and comment today on that when we get to that. But it is not our intention to take any action, just so you know. All right, so with that in mind, we'll start our meeting today with a Pledge of Allegiance by Stacy Skeen, our invocation by Stephanie Russell, and our thought of the day by Commissioner Frohr.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray together. Dearest Creators, we come before Thee at this time, in this wonderful, beautiful day, to celebrate the opportunities we've been given to serve here in this wonderful community. We ask that Thy Spirit be with us today, that we might be filled with unity, we might be filled with integrity, and that we might have the conviction and the opportunity to serve our fellow community members with integrity and with equity. We pray that our hearts and our minds might be in coherence with one another, that we might be inspired to seek out alternative solutions that have lasting short and long-term solutions to our community issues and to those things that are pressing hard on our community members. We serve Thee and we serve our community in righteousness and with all of our hearts and our souls. And we pray at this time that we might be blessed with a spirit of peace and a spirit of comfort as we strive to work towards collaborative efforts. And we pray for these things humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Commissioners, it's a great time of year here in Utah, Weber County. I think we all understand that's the Pioneer Day celebration. And some people refer to this as Cowboy Christmas. And being married to a former professional burial racer, it was. And I remember the travel, sometimes she'd do 2-3 rodeos in a couple of days period of time. Now you may ask, how do you do that? Well, they have a thing called slack that some people don't understand. And slack takes into account a lot of the competitors that aren't in the event held that night. And I think they're holding in fact, I know for a fact they're holding the slack barrel racing out at the Ogden Arena this morning. That's where my wife is at that point in time. But I think it's time to pay respect to our heritage. Obviously, we understand that 175 years ago, the pioneers made their way into Salt Lake Valley. And a lot of what we have today is because of the efforts they put forth from our water systems, sewer systems, etc. Now, the Days of 47, which celebrates the pioneers arriving in 1847, is different than our own Ogden Pioneer Days. And we happen to have the mayor with us today, a former mayor that I'm not familiar with. Harm Peary actually started this tradition, the Ogden Pioneer Days, in 1934. We'd just gone through or finishing up the Great Depression, and he looked for a way that we could bring, Ogden was an entirely different environment at that point in time, Depression, looking for ways to bring some excitement, regenerate some activity in the downtown, and Harm Peary made that happen. And you see the benefits of it today, and I believe, Mayor, we're at now the 88th year, so 88 years, and we have our Mayor Mark Mike Caldwell that is the overseer of that today for Ogden City. Anyway, it's a great history. It's a good time of year.
Great thought, Commissioner.
Get out there and enjoy the events. I think there's a parade on Monday, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. And if I'm not mistaken, also we'll be there.
We're riding.
We're riding. I'm not going to say what we're riding, but we will ride.
Wasn't Harm Perry a big cowboy anyway?
I think he wore a cowboy hat. I think he was, yeah.
The pictures I've seen of him have been on a horse.
So I saw on that bucking horse that I think is one of the emblems they use today. I don't know if that's him or not, but it's in the that picture's not him.
Mayors couldn't do that stuff.
I think maybe the new mayor should have that.
Yeah, maybe we should take one of the new mayor.
There you go.
Anyway, that's my thought, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's a great thought. We appreciate that. Very good. So the next item on the agenda is public comment for agenda-related items. Now, we're going to go into a public hearing later on, so we don't necessarily want you to comment on the public hearing. But any other items on the agenda you'd care to comment right now, it'd be a great time to step forward and do it. All right, we see that. None, so we'll move to the next item, which is consent items. Consent items today consist of a request for warrants as listed today for $1.623 million. Item 2 is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $213,000. Lynn, are you going to go ahead and summarize those for us?
I am.
Go ahead.
The first of these, 19 purchase orders totaling $213,000. Largest of these, 36% or $77,000 to the library for computer equipment and building equipment, 20% or $43,000 to roads for vehicle repairs, 17% or $35,000 to property management for Weber Center access control, and 10% or $21,000 to the Golden Spike Event Center for auction arena floor and portable restrooms. There were 237 warrants totaling $1.6 million. Largest of these, 38% or $622,000 to the transfer station for disposal fees, and 9% or $151,000 to 911 dispatch for software and hardware and other computer equipment, and everything else was less than 9%.
Thank you, sir. Questions, commissioners? You know, it's interesting. People wonder about what it costs you to get rid of your garbage. That's the net fee that we pay. That's monthly, isn't it, Lynn? Yeah, so that's and of course it's a tonnage, so it varies, it ebbs and flows. But that's what it was this month for our garbage to be landfilled, and they haul that to landfill in Tooele. Very good. Well, we'll finish this consent items then. Item 4 is approval of new business license. Item 5 is a request for approval of minutes of the meetings held on July 5th and July 12th. Item 6 is a request for approval of an interlocal agreement by and between Weber County and the Hooper City for 24-hour surveillance of a ballot box. Item 7 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Broadbean Technology for an Oracle vendor who will submit Weber County job postings to job boards. Item 8 is a request for approval of recession of professional services agreement and license maintenance and support agreement between Weber County's Attorney Office and Journal Technologies Incorporated. Item 9 is a request for approval of a Justware license purchase agreement by and between Weber County and Journal Technologies for the purchase of 40 Justware perpetual licenses. This is for our attorney's offices. Item 10 is a request for approval of a professional services agreement by and between Weber County and Pine Technology, LLC, to manage and provide technical assistance with case management software for the criminal division of Weber County Attorney's Office. Item 11 is request for approval of an amendment of a contract by and between Weber County and Victory Supply, LLC for inmate supplies. Item 12 is request for approval of retirement agreement by between Weber County and Trudy Flora. Item 13 is request for approval of Deputy Sheriff Basic Training Reimbursement Agreements by and between Weber County and the following individuals: Kyle Bodkin, Braden Bitton, James Mueller, Landon Silverwood, Justin Bateman, and Brad Pitkin. So, Commissioners, those are our consent items. Comments?
After hearing Lynn's recommendations, I'd make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we approve consent items, item F, 1 through and including 13 as presented.
Second.
Good. I have a motion and a second on the consent items. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. They're approved. Very good. Now we go to action items. First item is a request for approval of a venue use agreement by and between Weber County and the Salt Lake City, Utah Committee for the Games, outlining games, host venue requirements, expectation, and reimbursements by the venue and committee. Mariko Rollins, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Yes.
This venue identifies the Weber County Sports Complex and Ice Sheet as the curling venue for a 2030 or 2030-40 successful bid. 34, excuse me. Colin Hilton and Mayor Caldwell are here representing their agencies. This is the first agreement in the collective Olympic or future Olympic agreements to be signed.
Questions, Commissioners?
No, I'm
Terrific.
So we welcome you all here today. Mayor, we want you to know we appreciate your service on this committee and representing not only the county but the city and our area so that we get a little part of these games as well, and it's fun and exciting for us. All right. Well,
This, I would like to make one comment if I
Please.
could. I've heard it said, and you may confirm or deny this, but of government-operated facilities that were remaining from the 2002 Winter Games, our ice sheet is the most heavily used since then. Can anybody comment on that?
I can confirm that it's up there. I think in general, the collective of all of the Utah facilities are the most heavily used of any facilities in any Olympic Games.
Of any time?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I'd kind of like thinking that ours is the top of that list.
If it's not the most used, it's the most loved.
there you go. There you go, Mayor.
And if I may just point out, as a representative of the Salt Lake City, Utah Committee for the Games, we are excited to have the Weber County Ice Sheet be the first venue use agreement that we're signing. We had a visit from the International Olympic Committee just a few months ago, their technical review committee that came through and toured the facility, and if I may just share a comments that they loved the idea of returning to a venue that was used in the original games in 2002, and were blown away by the expansion to have the demand warrant a second ice sheet, and the collaboration with Weber State University to have the field house co-located with that second sheet. And it allows us to have less temporary facilities brought in for the parking lots, if many of you might remember that from '02.
Yeah.
So it really showcases the utilization of an Olympic venue after the original games as a very popular community resource that then can be converted back to use for an Olympic venue, which is very different from how the rest of the world approaches hosting an Olympic. So here in Utah, specifically to Weber County, you should be very proud that we're, as a committee representing Utah, highlighting such a high use and community used facility that can then be used for a period of a 2-month period to host the Olympics and Paralympic Games again in the future. And so thank you very much for your support. We really appreciate it. On behalf of Fraser Bullock, who is traveling today, otherwise he'd be down joining us as well today. We're very appreciative of your support to this effort, and Mariko and Mayor Caldwell have been terrific to work with.
Great.
One other
Love it.
question?
Yeah, you bet. Go ahead.
I just want to confirm, Mr. Crockett, you've had a chance to take a look at this agreement. We had some suggestions. Have all of those been satisfied?
So I personally did not look at this agreement, but Liam Keogh in our office did go over this agreement. I know he's been in contact with Mariko multiple times. He has discussed various insurance provisions with me, so I do know that our office has taken a very close look at this contract.
Great, I'm satisfied with that. Thank you.
Good. How about a motion then?
I'll make a motion that we accept this agreement between Weber County and the Salt Lake City, Utah Committee for the Games to be used for a venue for 34.
And I'm happy to second that.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. It's for 30, is 20, 30?
Or 30.
30.
30 or 34.
30 or 34.
Thank you.
Depending on which one we
I
get.
saw that, okay. I saw the 30, then you said 34, so I was just picking up on.
Either of
I'm
those
just
two
making
options.
stuff up.
At some time in the future, be it 30, 34, 38, 42, whatever.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's approved.
Thanks.
Thank you. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
you. Thanks
Comment,
again.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, please do.
I think just to pass back to the Salt Lake Committee, we'd appreciate that maybe if it's 1930 for some of us that are kind of on that older side that would like to be there.
We're all there with you.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
A good point, Gage. Well, you're on the young side. No big deal for you,
I
but
want to
for
hear
us.
it from you.
The formaldehyde doesn't flow quite then.
Oh, very good. Item 2 on our agenda is request for approval of a local transportation funding agreement by and between Weber County and West Haven for projects that are listed low. It's a 2700 West project, 1800 South, and 3300 South. Brooke, how are you?
I'm wonderful.
Brooke
Thank you
Stewart.
for having me. Good morning. Yes, as you mentioned, we have 3 local transportation funding agreements for your review for projects out of West Haven City. The first project we have is the 2700 West project. With this project, the city is intending to widen and improve 0.57 miles of roadway along 2700 West from about 2000 south to about 2550 south. The city's already improved the first section from about 1800 down to 2000, and this project will just continue with those improvements in preparation for the new junior high school that will be built in the area. This project was recommended for funding by WACOG and then approved by the County Commission as part of the Transportation Priority List for 2021 last November. The city's contributing $800,000 in local funds towards this project, and the agreement before you just outlines the terms related to the sales tax funds that are programmed for 2024. Do you want me to go through all 3? Since
I
they're
don't
listed together?
necessarily.
I don't need to.
No, I'm familiar with these.
Yeah, we're familiar
Okay.
with them, so we know what the projects are.
So the next project we have is the 1800 South, 2100 South Connector project. With this project, the city is intending to construct 0.88 miles of a new roadway from 1900 West, making a connection to 1800 South at approximately 2550 West. This connection will alleviate traffic from the misaligned intersection at 1800 South and 1900 West, utilizing the existing traffic signal at 2100 South, and then creating a direct connection to I-15. This project was also recommended as part of the 2021 Transportation Priority List. The city's contributing $1 million in matching funds towards this project, and the agreement before you just outlines the terms related to the sales tax funds that are programmed for 2024. And the final project out of West Haven City is the 3300 South, 3600 South Connector project. With this project, the city intends to preserve corridor in preparation for a future roadway from 3600 South and 2700 West to 3300 South and 3500 West. This future connection will also provide a direct connection to I-15 and alleviate traffic from the unsafe intersection at 3300 South and Midland Drive. This project was also recommended as part of the 2021 Transportation Priority List, and West Haven City is committing $500,000 in local funds towards this project. And this agreement just outlines the terms related to the corridor preservation funds that are programmed for 2023. Be happy to answer any questions.
So, Brooke, so everybody that is sitting here online will understand, how do we finance this?
This is from 2 funding sources. The corridor preservation funds are funded by a $10 fee that's paid with motor vehicle registrations, and then the sales tax funds are from the third quarter cent sales tax.
Right, so it's our quarter cent that we chose to
It was
put
approved by,
on our,
yeah, it
put
was
on
approved by the
ourselves.
voters in 2008.
Right. So you folks understand that when you pay that quarter cent, that this is spending it right here. Very good. Thank you. Commissioners?
No, I understand it. Been through these.
I trust the process. It's good. And
You
it
bet.
helps the growth out there. Thank you.
All right, I'm ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion that we approve the local transportation funding agreement by and between Weber County and West Haven City for the listed projects, including 2700 West, 1800 South, 2100 South Connector, and the 3300 South, 3600. That can't be south, that's west then probably. Or excuse me,
It
that
is
is
the
south.
south. It
That
is,
is south,
yes.
okay. Connector project.
Midland.
Those three is listed today by Ms. Brooke Stewart.
Understanding that is around Midland.
Yes.
Yes. I'll second that.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. They're approved.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Brooke. Item 3 on our agenda is request for approval of law enforcement service agreement by and between Weber County and the following cities. Far West City, Uinta City, Marriott Slaterville, Hooper City, I should say Marriott and Slaterville City, Hooper City, West Haven City, Huntsville Town, Plain City, Washington Terrace City.
Aaron Perry. Chief.
Chief Perry.
Chief Perry.
Get into that. Chief Perry, go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners.
I was sitting here looking through the presenters, and you weren't listed. And I was wondering if I read it wrong, so that's why I
Initially, I had the
hesitated.
thought of giving my lieutenants the opportunity to have
Yeah.
a little bit of FaceTime in front of the Commissioners, but they were all busy this morning, so I'm stepping in for them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So these agreements will renew the existing agreements with all of those contract cities for the Sheriff's Office to provide law enforcement services for them. It's a 5-year agreement. The expiring agreement had a 5-year extension, but we met with all the contract cities and made a few minor adjustments to the agreement, and so we're just starting a new agreement for another 5-year period. Those adjustments include an a la carte option that would allow a city to, in addition to the agreement, if they wanted an additional officer, if they wanted somebody in their office 8 to 5, then they could structure that separate from the agreement with us. Another change was just to clarify that the Sheriff's Office will participate in crime prevention programs, which we're already doing. There just wasn't any language in the agreement, in the expiring agreement. So we added that language. And then also that we will provide an activity report to the contract cities, also something that we are already doing, but there was no language in the expiring contract that detailed that, so we added that. We also added some clarifying language in the contract under how the costs are calculated. We didn't change the way that we've calculated costs for the last several years. We just added language in the contract to lay those out so it's clear how those are calculated. So those are the changes. Any questions? I can go into more details, but that gives you a brief overview.
Couple of questions.
Go ahead,
Mr.
Gage,
Chair,
this is your
so-
portfolio.
Chief, I'm assuming that the percentage that's kind of been the discussion in the past with these cities, that you've come to an agreement with the cities, and that's standard across all cities? Because I know there was some discussion about some cities wanting different percentages in terms of crime versus population.
Correct. So the fee is consistent across the board. Currently, the way we structure it is a 60-40 split.
Okay.
60% going to pulling from calls for service, 40% population. In this agreement just establishes the relationship that will provide that service. In the agreement, those fees can be renegotiated every year. So inside of this 5-year agreement, every year we can sit down and renegotiate those fees. So that could be, and it generally is, kind of an ongoing discussion every year of how those fees are going to be decided. We made the change from a 50-50 split 2 years ago to the 60-40. Last year, we just kept it the same for the agreement that we're in currently, but it is something that that is a discussion point and can still, underneath this agreement, be discussed every year and
Good.
modified as needed.
Yeah, and he actually answered my second question, which is that it's a 5-year contract, but the rate, the percentage between calls for service and population can be adjusted every year, which I think is a fair, because as we see the county grow in certain areas, crime calls for service will increase or decrease based upon what that growth dictates.
Correct.
So I think it's a good step. I'm glad to see the only thing that we have to negotiate would be the fee for service.
And it should be, as you mentioned, Commissioner, it should be renegotiated. It should be recalculated every year because there's multiple things that can change in that year. So inside of that 5-year period, those fees are recalculated on a yearly basis. Right now, as you know, with inflation, probably the biggest cost of increased fees right now, or biggest impact to the fees changing, is increased wages, which the commission's approved for the Weber County employees, and we're all very grateful for that. Thank you for that. But that impacts those fees. So that is something that should be renewed every year because of those changes.
Great. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Harvey, did you have anything?
No, I trust the process. I know that you've kept us in the loop for months and months as you've done the negotiating with the respective cities. I'm comfortable with this.
This is probably as tough as any contract the county has. This one is, because there's so many people involved in it. Very good. Well, Commissioner Faure, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to make the motion to approve the law enforcement service agreement by and between Weber County and the following cities: Far West City, Uena City, Marriott Slaterville City, Hooper City, West Haven City, Huntsville Town, Plain City, and Washington Terrace City, as presented today by Chief Aaron Perry.
Second that motion.
Very good. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes. Thanks, Chief Perry. Appreciate it. Very good. So we now have a public hearing scheduled. So I need a motion to adjourn this meeting and go to reconvene in a public hearing.
I'll make that motion that we adjourn our public meeting and convene a public hearing, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. We're now in a public hearing. Along with the public hearing, we have presentations, and then the public gets a chance to comment. So we'll start today with Felix Liverino. Did I?
You did good. Wonderful job.
Felix.
Yes, good morning.
How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Yeverino.
Yeverino. Oh, okay. Yeah. I do this every time. I'm sorry.
We'll try again next
I really like you, Felix.
Hey, I like you guys too. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure standing before you this
Go
year.
ahead.
So what we have before you today is approval of an ordinance to vacate some 10-foot public utility easements up in the eastern edge of the unincorporated Weber County near Causey, up above Causey area. There's a subdivision up there called Evergreen Park, and what the owner has done, they've acquired like 5 lots in a row all along the same road. They're right next to each other, and in order to utilize that land to the best of their what they would like to do, they're requesting to vacate some public utility easements, and they're just 10 foot. They're along the sides of the property lines, and that's pretty much the gist of the request today. The county's responsibility is to gather approval from engineering, which we have. We've also gathered consent letters from utility providers, Rocky Mountain Power and Questar Gas, to be specific. And another county responsibility specific to the county commissioners is to the vacation may be completed if the county finds that good cause exists for this vacation and that no public or will be harmed in this action. With that, that concludes what I had to say. Any questions on this? I'd be happy to answer those.
Commissioners, questions on these?
No.
No
Well,
questions.
I looked at this. I didn't see any big
No.
deal here.
Look pretty
Vacation of this.
straightforward to me.
Very good. Is there anybody in the audience who's come to comment on this vacation? Vacation? This property we're going to vacate, this right of way. Right now would be the time for you to speak to that. All right, very good. So we will, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a motion to pass this right now. Are you two okay with that?
No,
No.
because you have to go back into
Oh,
it.
that's true.
Yeah, we've got to
Okay,
go.
you're right, I'm mixed up.
Yeah.
Okay, so, very good, Felix, thank you. So with that in mind, we'll go to the second item on here today, which is a discussion on two ordinances intended to amend the form-based village zoning along with other sections of the Weber County Land Use Code to add provisions and exhibits extended to create a Nordic Valley Village area. Scott Perks.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for the time. As indicated at the beginning of this meeting, we would like to hold the public hearing on this item, but hold back on any decision as we look at a couple of adjustments that the applicant would like to look at before we move forward on any final action. With that, knowing that there will be a couple of adjustments, I'm happy to present what we have to date, but it may be best to wait until this future action to present any more information. But happy to answer any questions you guys might have at this point.
Do you have a presentation you were prepared to make to us?
We do have a presentation, but there may be some adjustments being made to the text before we are ready for final
Well,
action.
these folks have come to speak to that too, so why don't you go ahead and make that presentation?
Sure, absolutely. Let me get the screen sharing here. Yeah, bear with me while this Zoom fires up. That should be coming up here. So, Commissioners, what's before you is a text amendment to the existing form-based village zoning ordinance. The text amendment that is before us is initiated by an applicant that would like to create the Nordic village area within that existing ordinance. As you'll recall, the general plan from 2016 called for the creation of small village areas throughout the valley floor. This exhibit that you see is taken from the general plan, and it identifies in these red circles here where these villages would be appropriate to cluster development. Now, back in 2016, when we were looking at this general plan, we had to look at a couple of alternatives. Where do we put the density that is already allocated on the valley floor? Do we allow it to sprawl 1 unit per 3 acres? Or would we prefer, as an alternative, to cluster them into village areas? The second of which was that preferred alternative, and which is adopted in that plan. So looking to try to find ways to cluster the density into village areas. I think of this as the valley floor is a bathtub full of water, and these red circles as sponges that we're tossing into the bathtub, intended to soak up some of the density, preserve some open space on the valley floor and on the foothills, and direct development where we think it's appropriate in these small village areas. So what we're looking at in this form-based village zone was this zoning classification was first adopted back in 2021. And what it was a new zoning classification. It was a land use tool to help us create these village areas. And it's unique in that it is somewhat of a hybrid between traditional Euclidean zoning, which is the traditional separation of uses, grouping uses together and separating them, and a newer methodology called form-based zoning, which focuses more on the form and the function of buildings along streets, as opposed to just the pure clustering of uses. So the form-based village zone uses small area planning to create these villages and to designate street types and to identify the form that should be taken in each of these zones. And when this ordinance was first adopted back in 2021, we created the small area plans for Newtown and Old Town Eden, and you can see them in this colorful exhibit on the right, where these two village clusters, we designed the street network on what we call a street regulating plan. You can also call it a small area plan. They're somewhat synonymous. But the idea behind these small area plans is to help guide direction on our future land use decisions. If we were to rezone property in these village areas, what should the form be? What should the function of these buildings be? What should they look like? But something that is important to note is the form-based village zone, if we rezone property to this classification, does not serve to upzone any property at its face value. Traditionally, if we go from like a 1 acre zone to a half-acre zone, that doubles the density. But in this case, that is not how this tool works. This tool only works to bring density into these villages through transfer of development rights. So that's where we take development that's already entitled on the valley floor and transfer them into the villages to be realized as cluster development in the village area. So we have this tool that we've created and has served to begin creating these village areas. We have not yet rezoned any property to this classification, but it is a classification that is in existence, and as we look at rezoning property in these village areas, this will be the regulatory tool that we use to guide that development. Okay. Fast forward a little after that form-based code was adopted, we received an application from a large landowner in the Nordic Valley area to create the Nordic Village area. When that application was first submitted, it was originally submitted as a request to create a whole new zoning classification that they wanted to call a DRR2, a Destination Resort and Recreation Zone. Now, in past discussion, the county has desired to reduce the number of zoning classifications that we are creating, and the creation of a DRR2 classification was not necessarily desired. Alternatively, we saw, hey, we've got this form-based village zoning classification already created. It's already been designated as that land use vehicle to create these village areas. Let's make some amendments to that existing tool to allow for the creation of the Nordic Village. Okay, so with that recommendation from staff, the applicant amended their submittal and came back with a desire to make those adjustments to our existing form-based village zone to allow for the creation of a village area at the base of the Nordic ski area. Okay, as part of that submittal, Nordic submitted a concept plan that you can see as an aerial here. On the right, what you see in this dashed line is the owned land. It's about 510 acres of land that would potentially be rezoned to this form-based village classification once that classification has been amended to receive this type of development. On the left, you see more of a 3D rendering of what that village might look like if it were to come to fruition. And that image on the left is showing what we see here on the right, in that clustered resort core, so to speak. Okay, so we use this concept plan to somewhat guide our thought process and work with the applicant to propose amendments to the form-based village ordinance to allow for this to go forward. Some highlights on what is in the more detailed text amendment. In the staff report, you'll see that there's a couple of exhibits that show the long version of those amendments in a red line form. But just as a highlight, we've added and amended various definitions. We've expanded and recategorized the land use tables to include everything we have in our current commercial zones up in the valley. We've consolidated into this form-based zoning ordinance. We've added a section for special regulations to have a little bit more control on some of those uses. We've added a medium lot residential street type. Previously, we had a large lot residential and a small lot residential. We wanted to add another type in there that kind of completed that range of lot sizes.
Can you tell us what size that is?
So on the small side, a small lot residential is 3,000 square feet. The medium size is 8,000, and the large size is 20,000 square feet. So large is about a half acre. So there's a little bit more stratification between small and large by the addition of this new medium lot residential lot size.
So I'm surprised traditionally, well, when I say traditionally, I'm trying to decide just how traditional this is.
Sure.
When I was back in zoning and planning, so much of this was built around third-acre lots, and you've skipped right over those.
So this provides for half acre, a little less than a quarter, and then obviously the 3,000 square foot's pretty small. We're trying to create a dense core here. We're trying to find a way to save open space out in the valley floor and bring that density into this resort core. Now, when you look at it, you know, half acre is still a pretty big lot on the large size. Quarter acre, you can still get some pretty good sized detached single family homes. And when you get down to like a 3,000 square foot lot, then you have some patio style homes that we see on the other side of the valley. And that provides for that range, but not having obviously 3-acre lot sizes that take up a lot of land and don't allow for very much density to be soaked into that resort.
I understand all that. You didn't answer my question. You skipped right over third acres, so that was on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, if a third acre is desired, obviously we could add a new lot style or lot size, but yeah, a third acre was not in that small, medium, or large.
So the fact that it's not listed, they could still develop third acres.
They could, if it's in an area that has it allows for smaller, they could develop it larger if they'd like, but
Right.
it couldn't be sub.
All right, very good. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah. We made some adjustments to the development standards and street cross sections. We made, or we standardized the building height in the government and institutional, vehicle-oriented commercial, mixed-use commercial, and multifamily residential street types. Previously, it was set at 45 feet. We desired to just set a standard across all the villages to be 50 feet, so that is a slight increase. We added very specific Nordic design standards and architectural guidelines, as well as a small area plan or a street regulating plan for Nordic specifically, and I can show you that here in a minute. We also added a moderate income housing element to the form-based village code. That requirement, there's some options we've provided for you, would range anywhere between 5 and 10% or wherever we think is appropriate, but it is both an incentive and a requirement to have that housing provided as development occurs. Okay.
Requirement by who?
So it would be a requirement that the county would impose at the time of development. So for example, if a 20-lot subdivision came into us, if we had the 5% requirement, one unit would have to be set aside as a moderately affordable unit.
But the state of Utah requires us to do that, right?
They don't require us to do it yet, but they have some strong language that they've been passing over the last couple of years to start planning for it.
I was of the opinion that was a requirement.
Me too.
If we want to qualify for transportation funding, then it is that we have some of these goals laid out and we start executing on them. But right now it doesn't say, the state doesn't say you have to have, you know, this requirement in your code. They provide us with recommendations of what we could put in our code to try to execute on the creation of moderate income housing, but it is not yet a mandate from the state.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So specific to Nordic, we have designated some design standards. The applicant on this has wanted to follow what they're calling a modern interpretation of Alpine design. So that's, if you were to define that a little bit in more detail, it's a balance between modern Alpine and classical Alpine design features. And you can see a couple of images that show that architectural type. If you'll remember, Newtown and Old Town Eden also have their specific architectural standards that are specific to those village areas. Where this is a ski resort area, they would like to go with an Alpine design theme. Okay. Let me go into a little more detail on this street regulating plan that has been created specific to the Nordic Village. This is a planning document. It is a map that shows a hypothetical future of what could occur at the Nordic area through multiple land use decisions and rezone decisions down the road. I want to be clear, if we were to adopt this amendment with this Nordic-specific street regulating plan, it will not rezone anybody's property, okay? It shows what we could potentially rezone a property to if requested by that landowner in the future, but it does not guarantee a rezone. If somebody were to ask for a rezone, we would look to this document as a guiding document and make a decision from there. But it does not entitle anybody to a rezone, nor does it serve to rezone anybody if it were to be adopted. Okay? Let me show you this plan here. Okay. So, similar to Newtown and Old Town Eden, we've created a street regulating plan. Again, it's full of colors and full of street connections, both existing and potential future street connections. I'll zoom in here to the core. We've overlaid the proposed plan. You can see that here with these buildings. If adopted, we would codify this with this layer removed. We wanted to use this just to help guide our thinking in creating this plan. But each of the colors specifies a different street type, whether that's mixed-use commercial, multifamily residential, large, medium, small lot residential, down to the rural. And what you'll see is this plan has been put together with a larger village area in mind, the Nordic area. And as you'll see, the core slowly radiates out towards the edge with lessening intensity, so that transect goes from a mixed-use, high-density core down to current zoning at the periphery. And the darker green out here is current zoning and the 3-acre minimum. So we've created a plan, a hypothetical future, where we could accommodate more density coming into this village area, but also it has been designed in a way to allow a transect to evenly bring that density up into the core and not be an abrupt change from one street to the next. Okay. Do you guys have any questions on what this map does and does not do?
So those roads you have in there, some of those don't exist today.
That's right. If you see the dashed lines, these are hypothetical connections that may or may not be made in the future. The solid lines are existing, and if property were to request a rezone, we would look to this map to tell us what type of design and building should be on either side of the street.
Very good.
Okay.
So what is the difference? You got to go back there. When you see the yellow, there's a difference in the yellow between Viking Drive and the other yellows. What does that mean?
That's right. So Viking Drive is more of an orange here. We've designated that as medium lot residential. Medium lot, as we had discussed previously, is an 8,000 square foot lot size minimum. The lighter yellow you'll see further to the east here is large lot residential, which is a half-acre lot size. So it goes from 8,000 square foot on the orange here on Viking to half-acre on the yellow further to the east.
So there's a fair amount of concern today, and I just want to get right to this, that the bulk of the lots that have been developed up here in the past are acre lots.
That's right.
And so by making this a village area, whether they're in the you called it orange. I guess I'm colorblind if that's orange. Yeah, you are colorblind. Anyway, between the two colors, depending on what happens, some could go to half acre, which would double their density, well, their ability to have more on their property. And if you went to a medium, it would triple.
That's right. And just to be clear, if somebody were to request a rezone to one of these street types in a form-based village, they will not automatically get that density. It is not an upzone. If they request a rezone and they are granted a rezone, they would still need to transfer density into their property
Right.
from
You'd
the
have
valley
to buy
floor.
that density to move it in.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Just want to make sure we all understand exactly where this is.
Yep. Let me go back to the
What does it,
presentation. here.
hold on, for the sake of those who maybe don't know, if I can, Mr. Chair, what does it mean they would need to buy that density to move it in?
So, for an example, let's say down in the
I
valley
mean, I
floor-
know what it means, but I don't,
Sure,
I don't
happy
think
to
everybody
explain it.
knows. I think that's fair to,
Yeah, no, this is good to understand. So let's say, for example, we've got a farmer who owns 9 acres down in the valley floor in a 3-acre zone. Okay, 9 divided by 3 is 3. So they have 3 residential entitlements. They could split that 9 acres into 3 lots and create 3 homes on that property. Let's say they only want to build 1 home. So they build 1 home. They use up 1 of those entitlements. And then let's say somebody who lives in this Nordic area requests a rezone. They are granted a rezone, but then have to find, where do I get these entitlements to transfer in? They could contact that farmer down in the valley floor, negotiate to purchase 2 of his remaining density rights, and transfer them onto their property in Nordic. That would create an open space easement or a reduction in development potential down in the valley floor where those units could not come to fruition, and they would be realized in the Nordic area. So it's a 1-for-1 replacement of density in the valley floor. So you transfer out of the valley into one of these village areas, whether it's Nordic, Newtown, Old Town Eden, or any other village that may be created in the future.
what if you found a farmer up by Red Rock, by Causey? Could you do the same?
You could not. So the ordinance is specific as to where you can transfer these units from, and we are very specific about the zones where they are allowed to come from, and they very closely resemble what is the valley floor as shown in the general plan.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, just so everybody knows, the very first time this has ever happened just took place here a couple of months ago.
That's right.
And we allowed density to be sold
Looking at a
at
cistern
the...
lot.
Oh, is that online?
Yeah.
Whoever's online, could you mute yourself? From the corner of Old Snow Basin Road and the road that goes around the dam, they sold some density off of that, and another developer bought that. And we allowed that sale to go through. That's the first time that's happened.
Yep.
So,
And that's direct implementation of the general plan where we're trying to keep that density realized in these village areas where we're allowing it to move but into appropriate locations.
Right.
Yep. So that's the same case here. Now I also want to be clear, what is shown in this street regulating plan, again, a hypothetical future, does not rezone anybody. We do have an additional application from this applicant to rezone their property to this classification when and if the classification is amended. So this applicant is asking to rezone some of their property, but nobody else is in the vicinity. So to be clear about that, none of the neighbors are being included in that other application to rezone this property. Okay? Okay, let me hop back over to the presentation here. Okay. That's all that I wanted to share on the Nordic specific. If we want to make any action on this in the future, we may also include some amendments to our language that governs terminal and temporarily terminal streets, which is another topic of discussion, but I'll cut my presentation off there for now.
great. Thanks, Scott. We appreciate it. So once again, our intention is not to move on this today. Now, we're in a public hearing, so we'd like to invite all of you who've come who would like to comment on this data, please step forward. There's not a lot. Traditionally, we try to limit these to 3 minutes because we have lots of people who want to comment. If you run over a little, I'm going to give you a little latitude here because there's only 8 or 10, 12 in the audience, so it looks like they've come to comment on this. So please step forward. We'd love to hear your comments on this and how you view this. Now, would you state your name and where you live?
First off, thank you for your time. My name is Robert Coons. I live at 2557 North, 3750 East. That's in Nordic. I have a lot, 1 acre lot, and you mentioned if we were to ask for a rezone. You've also mentioned that for this form-based village plan, that there should not be any abrupt change from density, 1 acre, to this very, very, very tight density. If I were to ask for a rezone on my 1 acre lot and change that to 4 homes that I could build on there, I would require water and I would require sewer, because the septic systems would not fit on a 1/4 acre lot. Currently, Nordic Mountain Water does not have any more water. They've stated this as fact. There is no sewer system there either, and this is being pushed onto us, and you're giving us an opportunity to change our density, yet we have no viable way to do this. How is the county going to address this zoning in this area where there is no water available and no sewer available? That is my main concern there, that you state that it's important that this type of zone radiates outward to less and less density, so there is no abrupt change, yet none of the homeowners have any viable way to change the actual lot. There's no way to do it unless the county or somebody else were to build more sewer and more water available to the rest of the residents. Because of this, I believe this whole form-based village should be scrapped. It seems we're trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It doesn't fit into this area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Felice Quigley, and I live at the base of Viking Drive and Nordic Valley Way. I had the pleasure of speaking with you back in April with Joanna and Doug. Joanna can't be here today because she's traveling on a family vacation that's muchly needed, I'm sure. I just have a couple follow-up comments. Part of the goals of the general plan, as set forth in Land Use Implementation 1.4.2, are evaluating transferable density rights. There's mention of an ordinance which is specific, but I'm not quite sure what ordinance we're referring to determine what those transferable density rights are. I believe that if you look closely at 1.4.2, it specifically says that an applicant for determining whether or not they're going to transfer density rights, one of the factors that we and you have to look at is the consistency with surrounding land uses and the extent to which the transfer advances the goals of the general plan. It says that it has to be consistent with private covenants, compatibility with the surrounding land. If you look at Nordic, and I'm sure you've all been up there, I know that Commissioner Forer has been up there, you look at the homes that are established. We have probably close to 300 homes in Nordic, some of which have been there over 50 years. They're all on 1 acre lots, and right now the proposed street map that is being suggested has multi-family resident 5-story, 50-foot high buildings across the street from our homes, right across the street. Now, what was done, I believe, in connection with this new street map, because of the lack of any transition between multifamily residential and between medium lot residential, which our houses are now going to be targeted as, because of that, they drew 2 lines down the end of the street, down Nordic Valley Way. On one side is a solid orange line. That denotes multifamily residence. On the other side, it's the orange-yellow line, and I think you're right, Commissioner, it is orange. It's a little orange, it's a little yellow, but it's medium lot residential. So just the fact that you have 1 line on one side of the road and 1 line on the other with no transition between them for small lot residential, it kind of speaks for itself. This has not been, I believe, a well-thought proposal. I am not at all against development. As a matter of fact, I'm a proponent of it. I'm a proponent of very responsible development, and I think that Nordic could be developed responsibly. Laurent, in all the meetings that we've had and we've been to, and he has been great with the public, But he has said to all of us, the only building that's going to be over 35 foot high is going to be at the actual base of Nordic, where the ski runs come down. But this new plan puts 50-foot buildings 5 foot off Nordic Valley Way on either side of the street. It's going to be a tunnel going through to get to our neighborhood. It's not something that should be passed as proposed. I have met with Scott on a number of occasions. I have urged that the map be rethought about to develop a little bit more transition. I believe that this is not the map that should be approved by the commissioners. The other one last thing I will leave you with is that I remember, and I could be wrong, at one of the meetings in front of the Planning Commission, legal counsel said that if the text amendment is passed, it's essentially passing a rezoning of the entire community. And if that's the case, then I believe that everybody in Nordic has to receive a specific public notice about this. I know from being involved in the community that people are extremely concerned about this. There is a really tight community up there. And I believe that there's other ways and alternative ways that Laurent would probably be very amenable to that will effectuate what they want to do without jamming this street map in a community that's been established for over 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Just keep coming. This is your time.
Good morning, Commissioner. Some good points already made, so I won't...
Name and address.
Some good points already made. My name is Mike James. I've lived in Nordic Valley 27 years. I'm on the bottom of Viking Drive.
Thank you.
And during that time frame, early on, I was not accepted as a newcomer. And so some of the old-timers in the valley, you know, put up resistance, and one of them was my neighbor. And he lived in a log home directly behind me, and he had a false survey done on his property. And that survey said he owned part of my property. Well, straightened that out, and he was angry. So he was using different agencies to harass me into leaving. And one of them happened to be the fire agencies, Dave Austin, the Weber County Fire, the Forest Service. And unbeknownst to me, he had turned me in as my fence was a fire hazard. And so I don't know if they were up here on a training exercise or what, but there were 3 or 4 agencies up here, or excuse me, up in the valley. And they asked if they could come up and see the situation. So I said, sure. Well, all of a sudden, 3 fire trucks and a number of agencies came up the street and parked on the street, and you would have thought we had a big situation going on. And 4 or 5 gentlemen walked into my backyard. And we went back and looked at the fence, and they started to laugh. They said, his house is a bigger fire hazard than yours. It's undefensible. Now, that's the point I'm getting at. And so just out of curiosity, since I had all these agencies there talking freely, I said, well, what do you think about my house? And he said that your house would be one of the few that would be defensible. And I said, what do you mean? He said, Nordic Valley is one of the biggest fire hazards in all of northern Utah. And so he said that they had already predetermined which houses in that valley, which is scary, that they could defend. Now, if you're living up top of Nordic, that doesn't sound like a good prospect, that they can't really get in there to help you out. So my concern is this high-density type situation. Since most fires are human-caused and you increase the density, you increase the fire hazard potential. Not to mention if they're rentals, people come in, don't know the fire regulations, they shoot off fireworks. We've had a number of those instances. So my concern is we're setting up a huge fire potential. And the water issue's already been addressed. Nordic has said that they're doing no more hookups. So other than, I believe, the grandfathered site. So I think it would be irresponsible to vote for a situation that would put our property rights as well as our safety at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Others?
Thanks for having us here today.
You bet.
My name is Bruce McGill. I live on Viking Drive. I've been there since '94.
I don't think you'll find anybody here that's opposed to an expansion of the ski resort and development. They put a lot of investment into it, and they deserve to be able to do something with it. But as of April, all of a sudden we heard that you were going to be changing the zoning for Nordic Valley streets as per the form-based village. And none of us really had any input at that time. We finally get a chance to talk about that. I don't think it's necessary. I think that's being done just to conform with this whole concept of the form-based village. But it doesn't really require that you change all of those streets. There's nothing in that form-based village that says this has to happen. And Scott mentioned that, well, we can change that so that keeps that whole concept happy, but maybe to mollify the residents that really don't want it. He says, well, each property owner, it doesn't change the zoning per property. Each property owner has to go in and apply for a zoning change. Well, and each time this happens, you're going to have to confront the fact that there's not enough water, there's not enough sewer, and you can say, well, eventually we'll have a sewer system, but you can't make more water. You can drill more wells, but as everybody knows, and I don't think there's a week goes by you don't read an article about how there's not enough water now. And so you can either set this form-based village up in such a way that addresses the fact that there's a limit to how dense you can go up there. And that would be by leaving the 1 acre single-family homes as it is, because that already has enough water. But if you change the form-based village to where you can have 5 times that many people in there, that 5 times more residences, then each time somebody applies, you're going to have to go through this whole process of saying, well, there's not enough water. So why not establish this now so that you have, in a sense, like a master plan that already addresses that reality? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate that. Or Bruce. I said Mike. Pardon me.
Hello. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Peggy Dooling-Baker, and I live at 2619 Nordic Valley Drive and have for the last 37 years. I want to say that I strongly oppose this form-based village as presented, and I'm glad to hear you're not going to take action on it today. I understand small villages were part of the master plan, but this conceptual model was developed without input from us in the office, in the planning offices. Our vision of small village is much different up in Nordic Valley. I'm concerned the Ogden Valley Planning Commission went ahead with the approval when so many people overwhelmingly opposed it. In April I was here and there was approximately 80 people in the chambers and only one voice for it. The rest opposed. I looked online, all of the comments online. Only one was for it, the rest opposed it, but yet they went ahead and recommended it anyway. Currently, the current residents up there bought property with the understanding that it would remain open space. And as I hear what the original owner wanted, he set the land aside and put in a 3-hole golf course. In regard to the current proposal of a form-based village, this plan does not fit the original owner's vision, and it does not fit the current residents' vision of a form-based or of a small village. After we received notice at today's meeting on Friday afternoon and about the potential of the council making an action and voting on these amendments to the form-based village, we went out to the community on Monday with a petition to ask you to postpone. So we're very happy that you made that decision and reduce the size of the village. Again, we're not against development and viability of the ski resort. We all love it. We're skiers. But we just think the density to save the valley floor and to put the density all in our neighborhood up there is a little too much. So within 11 hours, we had 179 people stop by and sign a petition that they would like to see you postpone the vote and work to reduce the size of this village. Some of the comments are too much density, way too big, leave zoning as single-family units, prevent overuse, Don't destroy our community. Poorly conceived master plan. Stop development and make housing for local Utahns. I guess that was opposed to rentals. Take your time. Balance is a priority. Way too big, ridiculously big, too big. Growth is good, but not this big. So our community is not saying no. We're saying let's look at other options to reduce the size of this village. No community support for legislative rezone. Let's focus on future water use. We had 2 people stop by, one from the base of the road of Avon, whose neighbor ran out of water already, and one who has a lot in Wolf Creek who can't build because there's no water. So water is a big concern for us. Let's keep the valley. Please don't approve the change on Viking Drive. Too big, way too big. We don't want it. Irresponsible development. Concerns that the South Village hasn't been abandoned. No increase in density. Compromise. Stay small. And a couple of these I really liked, also would like to highlight. And it says, let's talk, slow down. Slow down, smaller scale, no water, and make it fit our area. So 170 people took the time to stop. I had a number of people email me that I couldn't include in the survey because they didn't have a signature, but they were out of town on vacation and emailed their support. So just wanted you to know what the residents' comments and what they were thinking, the constituents. So according to the land use plan, resorts within an approved destination and recreation resort zone shall, by and large, enhance and diversify quality public recreational opportunities. And here's the part I like: contribute to the surrounding community's well-being and overall instill a sense of stewardship for the land. So this large form-based village plan is too heavily slanted to development and therefore will be detrimental to the surrounding community's well-being. To be good stewards of the land, we should not rezone one of the last open space parcels and make it a commercial zone. So I'm very happy you delayed the vote and request consideration of a smaller plan with less impact to the environment, less impact to our resources, and less impact to the residents in the valley. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peggy.
Good morning. My name is David Boland. I live at the end of Viking Drive, 3462 Viking Drive. I just want to reiterate a couple of things about people talking about how big the development is and what's proposed. Again, my wife and I are not opposed to development, but let's make sure that it will fit with the 300-plus homes that are already in that area. Some of the things that because the discussion today is about the form-based village zoning ordinance, one of the things we do say that the form-based FBV, in particular the multifamily residential, which is going to be 100 feet away from us. You're going from 1-acre lots, single-family homes, to this MFR, which can have basically unlimited number of dwellings there. Issues such as no minimum acreage for this zoning. This is crazy. So you're going to dense pack as much as you can in this right across the street, and then basically the street is going to be the transition to our house. Also, 12-foot minimum lot setbacks and street frontage. That's just 12 feet, as well as 5-foot front setbacks. Basically, 5 feet off the road, you're going to have a dwelling. That's ridiculous. No minimum rear lot setbacks, no maximum percentage of lot coverage by a building. Basically, you can dense pack as much as you want in there. Again, right across the street from our house. No maximum number of residential units per lot. Basically, you're saying that you can put as much as you can in there. Now, if this is the ordinance, again, the rezoning request hasn't come in yet, but why wouldn't the applicant say, this is what was allowed, can we do this? Right across the street from our house. It just seems absolutely incredible. Something else, tone it down, would be acceptable, I think, to most everybody that's been talking about this today. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We appreciate that. Others? Nope.
No.
Don't hesitate. Come on.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Dan Mabey. I live in Farmington, but I'm an owner of 6 acres just immediately across from this property at 3662 Nordic Valley Drive. I am probably the odd one out because I quasi-support this. I think this fulfillment of the village overlay concept is a good way to do a master plan program. There are a lot of details, as been articulated by folks here in the audience, that should be considered very carefully. Setbacks, how these things are located. If they're all built right on the road with 5-foot setbacks, that's obviously not overly desirable, but I don't think that's desirable to the developer as well as a citizen. So I have some confidence in our planning folks that they would look carefully at that. The second point is this developer has invested quite a bit in our community. The family-based affordable ski resort up there is one of the few that I can afford to take my kids and grandkids to. The proposed development, I think, can add to this resort, and it can also create a 4-season element, which is we're seeing shortened ski seasons, maybe having off-ski season opportunities could be very helpful to the sustainability of this family-based resort. It's intriguing to think that we may be able to start something of a central sewer system in the area. I'm not sure how well that could expand out, but everybody's got to be on septics up there, and so if somehow this could be the beginning of initiative to create central sewer options up there, I think that would be a very positive thing to look at. I know we talk about fire hazards. Obviously, if they develop more fire water capabilities, that may be an advantage. They certainly have water they make snow out of in the summertime. It could be used for other things, so I think there's some cooperative opportunities there. It definitely would be an economic development initiative, I think would be beneficial to the area. And I understand growth is inevitable. I'm raised on a large ranch, several thousand acres, and we don't have any neighbors, and there are some advantages and disadvantages to that kind of proposition. I understand also that too large is a concern. But I also think that too small may be just as much of a concern. I'm not sure what the correct number is, but it's got to be economically viable. It's got to be operationally viable for it to be a quality resort, and that's what I hear folks in the area saying is we want something that's quality, that's sized right for what goes on. And so I've worked with Scott and several of the planning folks. I think they're very receptive to input from the community, and I would just encourage that to continue on. And thank you for your oversight, your diligence, as well as the planning and zoning's diligence, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan. We appreciate it. All right, there was another gentleman back there who was going to get up. There you go. He's still coming.
Hi, Commissioners. Good to see you all again. My name is Doug Weaver, 3701 Viking Drive. If you recall, the three of us met, three of us from the community met with each of you individually, 2 of you guys together, a few months ago. We brought up our concerns. One of the things that I took away from that meeting, and Gage, I got an email from you. I'll just quick refer to that email. And I appreciate you writing me back. It said we'll be slowing this process down so we have time to investigate all your information and listen to more public input. I just got back from vacation. I just got off a flight like 6 hours ago, or got home at my house 6 hours ago. This just came up on Thursday to be heard today and voted on. I don't feel like that's adequate time for public input on this issue. It's a very, very big issue. I feel honestly like you guys are trying to kind of slide this in when people are away on vacation and not giving us enough time. That's the first thing I feel. And I think it's too fast. This is a very important issue. The other thing you guys talked about was property rights, how important property rights were to the applicant here in this case. I'm a property owner as well, as all these people are here. There's about 300 lots there that are owned by individuals that are currently residents and vote for people like you in this community. There's roughly 600 people maybe that own that, family, spouses. What about our property rights here? You guys are proposing to create a framework to rezone our neighborhood. We don't want that. There's no reason for it. Not opposed to building a village at the base of the ski area. But I think a village is quite a misnomer. I think it's misleading the public when we say a village. I calculated about 4 square miles that this village is going to contain with the new rezoning. I'm fearful that this new rezone for Viking Drive is going to allow a developer to come in and purchase the empty lot next to me or a rundown cabin and buy transfer property rights. You mentioned in your meeting on last Tuesday on the Zoom call I listened to that John Lewis has transferable property rights. He could come in and buy the lot next to me and build 4 or 5 homes right next to me, tear down all the trees. That's what we're worried about. We don't want that. We like to see trees in our backyard. We like a buffer to our neighbors. People have horses and chickens and animals. That's what we like. We want to keep that. I don't think that the construction of the Nordic Valley village at the base of the ski area requires the whole neighborhood to change and change our property over time. I realize it's not going to happen immediately. I realize there's a lot of things that have to happen in order for those additional units to be built. But I feel like we're giving a foot in the door for developers. We're not there for the money. The people that live there enjoy living there the way it is. I would actually call it almost perfect. It's a wonderful place. Changing it is going to be irreversible. It's a very serious and dangerous thing, I think, this street map, what it's doing to our community. And I just don't feel it should be part of this ordinance that's being passed. I feel like that map should have some time and thought put into it, more so than it was done. I brought this up at the Planning Commission meeting. At the very end of the meeting, I mentioned it again, that it was a very dangerous thing. To be honest, I didn't even realize the implications of this map until I attended that meeting and heard the presentation from Scott and Charlie. I don't think it's been communicated to the public what's being done by all of these village rezones or framework. It's going to happen in other places too. And I don't think, I think that this framework maximizes the impact to the existing neighborhood instead of minimizing it. Way too big, right? You see all those signs. We're trying to minimize the size of this, minimize the impact to the Nordic Valley, preserve that character. This street map does not preserve the character that the Ogden Valley plan was shooting for. It could destroy it in the Nordic Valley neighborhood. And that's my biggest concern. I don't want to stop this process. I realize this is a long process, but just hear us. Please hear us and take this to heart. I don't think it needs to be passed today with the street map as it is, because I think it's going to be more work for us to come back and try to propose an amendment to change it back to the way it should be. I just want you guys to put more thought into that. That's my biggest request. So I would ask that the existing 300 lots in Silverbell Estates be removed from that street map. I don't think they need to be there. If you want to add village to undeveloped area or add new street maps and rezoning to create a framework for places that are not developed, I think that that's a fair thing and it should be discussed publicly. But I do not think that Silverbell Estates and any of the existing homes that Nordic Valley area should be included in this street map unless they just retain the basically 1 acre lots. 1 unit per acre. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. We appreciate that. So, Stacy, we have some online?
Yes. Say the name again.
L. Irvin. So, Mr. Irvin, could you unmute yourself and speak away?
Larry Irvin on Nordic Valley Drive. Despite the strong opposition from local residents, the momentum on this Nordic form-based village zoning change train continues unabated as it plows towards our community. During last week's work session, Commissioner Harvey asked Scott Perks to confirm that this is what the people wanted up there, and Perks responded that it was. This assertion has also been made by Charles Ewert in several Ogden Valley planning meetings. This is a significant misrepresentation of the public input prior to the latest general plan, and this characterization that a village in Nordic Valley is what the people wanted needs to be challenged. Prior to the current general plan, public surveys and workshops were conducted. Old Town and New Town Eden were commonly used as examples of a village concept, and that formed the public perception of a village implementation. A scenarios workshop was also conducted then that asked the participants questions based on build-out scenarios, which included village concepts. But this workshop only had a couple dozen participants. Often the differences in the answers on one side or another was very small. Any conclusions based on such a small data sample would be subjective at best. Nordic Valley was not even initially one of the village sites. On page 14 of the 2016 Ogden Valley Plan Study, it states that Nordic Valley was later added in order to get to a theoretical build-out projection. These build-out projections were flawed in their approach and assumptions, and these flaws are now visible since we now have the actual 2020 census data to compare with the general plan projections. I have a breakdown of the faulty projection math as a PowerPoint doc that I'll submit. Again, it is a misrepresentation to say that this is what the Ogden Valley public understood how a village concept would play out if ever implemented in the Nordic Valley hillside. That the new zoning would allow significant and treasured open space to be sucked into the development as the primary footprint of the building area. If there's any doubt about what the public wanted, then I suggest we ask them again. This whole process seems backwards. We are discussing amending a new zoning to favor a proposed project so that the new zoning can then be applied so the development can be approved. A project that could otherwise not be considered with current zoning. We in Nordic Valley had every reason to expect that a ski resort development would eventually occur, but no one expected the rules would change in this way to create a development of this size and location made possible by a zone change that allows the consumption of the beautiful open space the community treasures. We ask the county commissioners to stop this train and do not take any action on Nordic Valley amendments. Zoning amendments, we are assuming Commissioner Ferrer will be abstaining from the discussions and voting on elements that directly or indirectly impact the proposed development since he has a financial interest in it. We can't make a mistake here based on a subjective and self-serving interpretation of the public input from 7 years ago. The stakes are too high, and the character of this community is in jeopardy of being negatively and permanently impacted. The character everyone appreciates and what drew folks to live in this area.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate that. Hey. No, I'll call you out of order if you do that. We appreciate those comments. Are there other people online who would like to comment? I seen I made a note here. Dan Stefanik? Don Stefanik? All right, I guess not. Beth?
Beth, looks like.
All right, Beth. Unmute yourself and start speaking.
Hi, I'm Beth Austin, also on Nordic Valley Drive, also a sixth-generation Utah, so I can brag a little about that. And if there's one thing, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
You're coming through
If
clear.
there's one thing we all know is that change is inevitable. We are not NIMBYs, we are not anti-development, but we don't have the knowledge base that you do have and that urban planners have. So to that end, for the last 6 months, since I'm a retired researcher, I have been nonstop researching form-based codes, which is what the Nordic Valley, what Weber calls it form-based village, but it's actually called form-based code, as well as learning all the Utah laws, Weber County laws, and other laws that regulate land use in our area. I have learned that while the Nordic Village does follow a few of the elements in the Ogden Valley Plan, which have been presented to the Planning Commissioner, the overwhelming and most highly agreed upon elements of the Ogden Valley Plan conflict with Nordic Village. including the fact that the highest priority is preserving land that is already zoned for open space. They want all commercial or most of commercial development that's pre-zoned for commercial development to be used before rezoning any more land. And they would like those businesses to be locally owned or majority locally owned in order to preserve the economic viability of those who live in Ogden Valley. And I think we all know the problem of out-of-state developers and most of the money going out of state. The other thing I don't think the Ogden Valley Planning Commissioner understood, and a lot of them are new, is that unincorporated Weber County is not covered and protected by a lot of the nuisance codes because we don't have municipal nuisance codes. There's a few, like barking dogs and drunken disorderly people, but most of the most important ones are not regulated. Therefore, if residents are directly near all sorts of permitted uses that emit fumes, odors, dust, toxins, and other unpleasant and disruptive noises, there's nothing they can do. There's one tiny line in the Nordic Village form-based ordinances that discusses some mitigation coming from indoor uses only, but it's very subjective. And the people that will be deciding that will be the regulating body of the form-based village, which will be the developer, because they own the vast majority of it, even if a few residents join. I also don't think they really understood that form-based villages, while mixed use, only put together compatible uses. In no way should a low-density residential existing neighborhood be faced with a neighbor who joins the form-based village and builds a waste treatment facility, a fire station, a school, any type of public utilities that are by their very nature extremely disruptive to the existing property rights of local residents. And there's no way that we will be able to mitigate those disturbances because we don't have the proper codes. Other form-based codes in municipal, even Park City, New York City, Alta, Sandy, they all have that infrastructure. We do not. And it really makes us vulnerable. And I do not think that's good planning or good governance. And I hope you will reconsider going back and spending more time. Thank you.
So Beth, when you refer to infrastructure, are you talking about the physical infrastructure, or are you talking about the infrastructure in the code?
I'm sorry, could you clarify that? I'm talking about the permitted usage of...
In the code.
In the code, correct.
Very good. All right. I just want to make sure I understood that right.
Okay, there's the widest number of permitted usage in the form-based code for Nordic Village in any other zone in Weber County. And I think that's because the staff planners are so busy with all sorts of tasks that they simply ported everything over generically, as opposed to only allowing permitted uses that are necessary and compatible.
Very good. Thank you. So, Stacy, that's everybody online?
This is Shanna. I don't know how to put my hand up. I can't find the icon to raise
That's
my
okay,
hand,
Shanna. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. One of my concerns, too, is that the way with mixed use, and then with this being really in a resort community, instead of the original goal of having village areas, take the density off the floor and put them in these village areas, because of the nature of it being a recreation area, and then the form-based allowing for the mixed uses, we're defeating the original purpose of allowing density for community members to be able to build in a cluster area to take that residential zoning off the valley floor. And instead, we're inviting we're taking that zoning and turning it into commercial or other uses that would traditionally be open and left for single family or for families so that they can come here and build. We're changing it. So again, we're having less affordable housing in that now some of this form-based zoning or code is allowing this density to be turned into commercial and other uses, and other uses that are more geared for a recreational zone. And so there again, we're defeating the purpose of making affordable housing for families to come here and settle and be able to set up their families here. And it just seems like such a large contradiction of what we were trying to do in the first place. And I think that's one of the things we're running into as our original goal is to have the density in village units, but we're putting them in recreational areas that are not for the residential families, so they can afford to come here and live, and we have a community that doesn't look like it's overbuilt with a sea of roofs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else in the audience that would care to comment before we close this? See none, I'd accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
And that motion is to return back to a...
Yeah, close it. Yeah, motion is to close the public hearing, go back into our scheduled meeting to address the issues of H2.
Very good. So the motion is to go back to a regular meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. So we're there. Very good. We want to thank all of you today for your comments. They're well appreciated. So now the question is if we're going to take any kind of an action on Ordinance 2022-18. So Charlie, you're standing there.
I'm just here to answer questions if you would like any responses. We're taking careful notes on public comments, and if you'd like any of them addressed, we're more than happy to do so.
This first one would be for Felix Yavarino first.
Hold on, but he's and those folks are just walking out the door.
This happened during the Planning Commission's public hearing. A lot of folks left right after comment and didn't stay for the answers.
I was expecting that we would later on meet and go through these individually, see how we're going to react and if we feel desire to.
Okay. Happy to do that in work session with you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Commissioners, I'm looking for a motion.
Are you looking for a motion on H2?
Right.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion. This is the item that was presented by Felix Yavarino about the 10-foot strips. I'll make a motion that we vacate those utility easements as presented by Mr. Yavarino in the Evergreen Park subdivision. This would be ordinance number 2022-18.
Very good.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oops, that's an ordinance. Craig, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, roll call vote for ordinance 2022-18. Commissioner Floor.
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey.
Aye.
Chair Jenkins.
Aye. Very good. That passes. Well, we said that we were not going to take any action on H3, so that concludes our work today. Commissioner, comments?
Yeah, I'd like to, do you need a motion to hold that, or do you think we're all right?
Attorney.
I'm looking at the ambassador.
The action on the public hearing is request for approval. It's on the agenda. I would recommend that you table it if you're going to table it to a time certain, or just table it for further discussion, not to a time certain.
I think that's probably appropriate. Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion on agenda item H3 that we hold 2022-19, 2022-20 for future conversation, future
Very good.
action.
Motion is to move the agenda on those.
I would like to make a comment.
Yeah. Hold on, let's see if there's a second.
We have a second.
Motion to hold to a time uncertain?
Time uncertain.
Yeah, until we get the, that, I'm good with that. I'll second that motion.
Okay, I have motion second. Commissioner, go ahead.
So, yeah, number one, I appreciate the public coming and make comments. I'm a little surprised that they left before the end of the meeting, again, so that they could take back the information from this commission rather than maybe create some on their own. But let's talk first about the general plan, which is, I think if you look at the general plan in 216, it's pretty specific. The idea was to take rights off, development off the valley floor and put those into other areas. So I think you can interpret that. But that's really I think the emphasis of what the planners looked at, looking back to that 2016 plan, in eliminating that ability to what I would call sprawl the valley floor. Obviously, we have a current ordinance in place that allows TDRs to be transferred from the valley floors into resort areas only. It's not widespread. We also recognize, or I recognize, the property rights of the existing landowner that has the ability, with whatever number of units he has, that he could spread those units out on that total acreage, which again flies in the face of that general plan to consolidate rather than put those on hillsides in the valley floor. With that, I also recognize, and I think a lot of the comments today related to the transition between that village area and what that impacts, I think that needs some additional discussion. In my career, I think it makes sense to have what I would call logical transition. You don't go from an industrial area into a 3-acre zone. You have to have a transition area that makes sense. And so that needs to be addressed, I think, with public comment. And obviously, I would encourage those people that say they haven't had the opportunity to comment, that we've had planning commission meetings. This has actually been, I think, discussed for at least 6 months. So the opportunity out there exists. And I would not accept that as an excuse to show up at a meeting that something's been on the agenda or talked about over the last 6 months and ask for postponement. I think there's some areas here. So if you want to be heard, if you want your voice heard, show up to those commission meetings, the planning commission meetings, make your comments available so we have those. And that's, with that, I would say that we have some work to be done. I think that it was a worthwhile discussion, and we'll deal with that sometime in the future.
One thing that I would like to comment on here is the fact that it came through to me today that we view these village zones different. In other words, the developer is developing a village, but it's a village within a village zone, and others view his village as the zone.
That's correct.
And there's no question, that's a message that maybe we haven't sent, Charlie, I don't know. But I do believe that we've got to sit and talk about that, because there is a general misunderstanding on what the village area is.
I think you're right, Commissioner. I brought this up with the Planning Commission as well. We're using the term form-based village zone. We probably should have just said form-based community.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're not talking about a village spread out. Somebody mentioned 4 square miles. That is not at all, even if you were looking at quarter-acre zoning, that is not at all what a village is. And so that may be something that we want to tweak with this change, is instead of calling it the FBV, maybe we call it the FBC, form-based community. And they might have villages in them. They might not have villages in them. The general plan tells us to do small area planning. That's what this is. village, not village, let's call it a small area or a small community. That's
Yes.
really
Very
what I
good.
think.
Yeah, I
apples to
absolutely
apples.
agree with that.
Thanks.
True.
Yeah. All right. Yes, Commissioner Harvey.
So with that too, I appreciate the comment that was made by Mr. Irvin that said this is what the people wanted. I was corrected in our meeting just yesterday. Mr. Irvin, you're right. The people didn't want any kind of density up there at all. And there were two options because of what existed up there. There were two options. One was to scatter the density all across the mountain. The other option was to take all that density and put it in a community or a central location or a village. Of those two options, I was corrected to say that of the two options, this is the one that they preferred rather than scattered all along the ski resort and everything else. And so I stand corrected and I appreciate that. But that's, I appreciate the comments that were made today. I've taken copious notes today and appreciate that time to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have a motion and a second to delay this. All in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
So we will address this, I would think, again. I will put it on the agenda again in the next week or two, depending on when I can get votes for you to do that.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Very good. So, commissioners, comments?
Oh, good meeting. Learned a lot today.
Good to hear.
And I appreciate us being the first Olympic venue that's ready to go for the next Olympics.
Very good. We have a Commissioner Ford. I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have something else to say?
Good, thank you.
So we have an agenda to close this meeting to talk about some other things. Is that still, our attorneys, you still bringing us something?
Yes.
Okay, this generally has to do with litigation or property purchase. So with that, a motion to close the meeting to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion that we close our Board of Commissioner meeting to adjourn to a private, a closed meeting to discuss pending litigation.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. So folks, right now, we're going to go in the back room, and our attorney is going to make a presentation to us, and then we will come out and tell you if we've decided to do anything. But just so you know, it will not affect, no way will take any kind of move on the Upper Valley and what's happening up there. Very good.